Home help accidentally enters the boss bathroom. She isn't mad but fell for him. The marble floors of the Whitmorechan estate gleamed under Dylan's worn cloth, each stroke a reminder of the invisible wall between his world and theirs. Champagne glasses clinked in the grand hall above while he scrubbed baseboards in the servants' corridor, his calloused hands moving with practiced efficiency. Dylan. Marcus, the head butler, appeared with that smile, the one that never meant anything good. Miss Patricia needs these documents delivered to the East Wing. Immediately. Room 304. Dylan wiped his brow. But I thought the East Wing was... Are you questioning me? Marcus's voice dripped with condescension. Or would you prefer I tell Miss Patricia you refused a direct order? I'm sure your family's creditors would love to hear you've been fired. The threat landed like a fist. Dylan took the leather folder, his stomach nodding. 300,000 in debt. His mother's medical bills. His sister's tuition. This job was everything. He climbed the forbidden stairs to the East Wing, the private quarters where staff never ventured. The hallway stretched before him, doors numbered in gleaming brass. 301, 302, 303. Room 304's door stood slightly ajar, steam curling from within like an invitation to disaster. Dylan knocked. Miss Patricia? I have documents. No answer. Just the sound of running water. He pushed the door open and the world tilted sideways. The bathroom was a cathedral of marble and gold, but Dylan saw none of it. His eyes locked on the woman emerging from behind the frosted glass shower door, wrapped in nothing but steam and a towel that was slipping. Their eyes met. Patricia chin froze mid-step, water droplets cascading down her shoulders. She should have screamed. Should have had him arrested. Should have done anything except stare at him with those sharp, analytical eyes that seemed to see straight through his uniform to something deeper. Who sent you? Her voice was ice and silk. Marcus said. Documents? Dylan's words tangled. He tried to back away but his foot caught on the bath mat. He stumbled forward. She stepped back. Her heel hit a wet patch. Time slowed to a crawl as Patricia's balance failed, her arms windmilling. Dylan's instincts overrode his panic. He lunged forward, catching her around the waist just before she could crash into the marble edge of the bathtub. 4-3 heartbeats, they were frozen. His arms around her. Her hands gripping his shoulders. Her face inches from his, those commanding eyes wide with something that looked almost like vulnerability. You could have let me fall, she whispered, studying his face with unsettling intensity. Claimed it was an accident. Sue for damages. I would never, Dylan's voice cracked. Are you okay? Something flickered across her features. Surprise, maybe recognition. You're actually asking if I'm okay. Of course I am. Patricia's expression shifted, and Dylan felt the weight of being truly seen for the first time in years. Not as the help. Not as invisible. As a person. What's your name? Dylan, ma'am. I'm so sorry, I was told to deliver. Dylan. She tested the name, still not moving from his arms. Marcus sent you here, didn't he? To my private bathroom. With fake documents. Dylan's blood ran cold. I didn't know, I swear I didn't. I know. Patricia finally stepped back, adjusting her towel with the same controlled precision she used in boardrooms. I can see it in your eyes. You're not like the others who work here. The ones who would sell photos to tabloids or plant listening devices for my competitors. I would never. I believe you. She tilted her head, and a dangerous smile played at her lips. Which is why you're fired. Dylan's world shattered. Please, Miss Chin, I need this job. My family. From cleaning staff, Patricia continued, her smile widening at his confusion. Effective immediately, you're reassigned to my personal staff. I need someone I can trust. Someone who catches me when I fall instead of taking pictures. I don't understand. Patricia moved closer, and Dylan caught the scent of jasmine and power. You will. Report to my office tomorrow at 6 a.m. And Dylan? Her finger traced the edge of the folder he still clutched. These are blank pages. Marcus set you up to humiliate both of us. But he miscalculated. She leaned in, her lips nearly brushing his ear. He gave me exactly what I've been searching for. Someone real. Patricia pulled back, leaving Dylan breathless and confused in her marble sanctuary. Now get out before anyone sees you, she commanded, but her eyes held warmth that contradicted her Ice Queen reputation. And Dylan? Wear something better than that uniform tomorrow. You're not invisible anymore. She closed the bathroom door, leaving Dylan standing in the hallway, his heart pounding like thunder. Behind him, Marcus watched from the shadows, his face twisted with rage. The trap had failed. Worse, it had backfired spectacularly. Dylan stumbled down the forbidden stairs, his mind reeling. He'd come to deliver documents and nearly destroyed his life. Instead, he'd caught a falling queen and somehow changed everything. He didn't know it yet, but Patricia Chin, the woman feared by CEOs and worshipped by investors, was already planning how to keep him close. Because in that moment when he'd caught her, when he'd asked if she was okay with genuine concern in his eyes, she'd felt something she'd spent millions trying to find. A reason to trust someone completely. The Ice Queen had found her warmth. And nothing would ever be the same. Before we get into the main story, let me know in the comment section where you are watching from, subscribe and share because I have more interesting stories to share with you. Dylan had learned to be invisible long before he came to the Chin estate. Growing up in the cramped two-bedroom apartment on the wrong side of the city, he'd perfected the art of fading into walls, of not taking up space, of making himself small enough that creditors might overlook him when they came pounding on the door. His father had died when Dylan was 12, a construction accident that the company called negligence to avoid paying compensation. His mother, Sarah, had worked 3 jobs trying to keep them afloat until her body gave out 2 years ago. Now she lay in a long-term care facility, her mind slipping away piece by piece while the bills mounted like gravestones marking their family's slow death. Then there was Emma, his 16-year-old sister, brilliant enough for a scholarship to the prestigious Whitmore Academy but not quite brilliant enough for a full ride. The remaining tuition, $15,000 a year, might as well have been $15 million. So Dylan worked. He worked until his hands cracked and bled, until exhaustion became his constant companion, until he forgot what it felt like to sleep through the night without dreaming of collection notices and eviction warnings. The Chin estate job had been a miracle. Room and board included, which meant he could sublet their apartment for extra income. The pay was decent, enough to chip away at the mountain of debt if he lived on nothing but hope and instant noodles. He'd taken the position 3 months ago, grateful beyond words. And he'd been invisible. Perfectly, safely invisible. Until tonight. Dylan made his way down the servants' staircase to the basement level where staff quarters sprawled like a forgotten kingdom beneath the marble paradise above. His roommate, Chin Wei, was already asleep, snoring softly in the narrow bunk across from Dylan's. Dylan sat on his bed, still trembling from the encounter. Patricia Chen's face floated in his mind, those sharp eyes that had seen him, really seen him, in a way no one had in years. The weight of her in his arms. The jasmine scent that clung to his uniform now. Someone real, she'd called him. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, 6 a.m. My office. Don't be late. PC. Dylan's heart hammered. How did she get his number? But of course she did, she was Patricia Chin. She probably knew everything about him already. His debts, his family, his desperation. The thought should have terrified him. Instead, something else stirred in his chest. Something dangerous that felt almost like hope. He pulled out the staff manual from under his mattress, flipping to the section on personal assistance. The position paid triple what he made now. Triple. He could have his mother in a better facility within months. Emma's tuition would be covered. They could breathe again. But personal assistance to Patricia Chin never lasted long. The rumors were legendary. She was impossible to please, demanding beyond reason, cold as the ice her reputation was built on. Most quit within weeks. Some were fired within days. Dylan had caught her when she fell. She'd called him real. Maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. Across the estate in her private suite, Patricia stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city lights. She'd changed into silk pajamas, her hair dried and pulled back, her usual armor of makeup stripped away. She held her phone, Dylan's employee file open on the screen. 23 years old. No criminal record. Stellar references from his previous 3 jobs. Family in crisis. Working himself to death to save them. Someone real, she murmured to her reflection. In a world of people who wanted her money, her connections, her influence, who saw her as a stepping stone or a trophy, Dylan had looked at her with genuine concern. Had asked if she was okay. Had caught her not to gain leverage but because it was the right thing to do. Patricia Chin hadn't gotten where she was by ignoring opportunities. And Dylan, honest, desperate, invisible Dylan, was the opportunity she'd been waiting for. Not just an assistant. A test. A gamble. Maybe even a weapon against those who thought they could manipulate her through the people she kept close. Julian Blackwood, her rival, was planning something. She'd felt his schemes tightening around her company like a noose. He tried planting spies before, offering her staff obscene amounts to betray her. But you couldn't buy someone like Dylan. She'd seen it in his eyes. His loyalty wasn't for sale because it came from something deeper than greed. It came from love. For his family. For doing right even when it cost him everything. Patricia smiled at her reflection, and it was the smile that made competitors surrender before battles even began. Tomorrow Dylan will enter her world. And together they would rewrite all the rules. Dylan arrived at Patricia's office at 5:47 a.m., wearing the only decent shirt he owned, a white button-down he'd ironed 3 times until the creases were sharp enough to cut. His palms sweated as he stood before the mahogany doors, each one probably worth more than his entire year's salary. He knocked. Enter. Patricia sat behind a desk that could have doubled as a landing strip, her slate-gray suit immaculate, her dark hair pulled into a severe bun. She didn't look up from the documents spread before her, but Dylan felt the weight of her awareness tracking his every movement. "You're early," she observed. "I didn't want to risk being late, ma'am." "Patricia." She finally lifted her gaze, and Dylan felt that same jolt of recognition from last night. "When we're alone, you call me Patricia." "I don't think that's appropriate." "I don't care what you think is appropriate." She stood, moving around the desk with predatory grace. "I care what works. And formality creates distance. I need you close, Dylan. Very close." Heat crept up his neck. "Miss Chin." "Patricia," she corrected, stopping inches from him. "Say it." "Patricia." The name felt dangerous on his tongue, like crossing a line he could never uncross. Her lips curved with satisfaction. "Better. Now about your new position." The office door burst open. Marcus stormed in, his face purple with rage, flanked by 2 senior staff supervisors. "Miss Chin, this is completely inappropriate." Marcus jabbed a finger toward Dylan. "This boy is cleaning staff. He has no business being anywhere near your private office, especially after last night's incident." "What incident?" Patricia's voice dropped to a temperature that could freeze blood. Marcus faltered. That is, the documents he was supposed to deliver? The blank pages you sent him to deliver to my bathroom?" Patricia's smile was razor sharp. "Yes, Marcus. Let's discuss that incident. In detail. With HR present." The color drained from Marcus's face. "Or," Patricia continued, moving to lean against her desk, "you could accept that Dylan is now my personal executive assistant, effective immediately and return to your actual duties. Which choice appeals to you more?" "Executive assistant?" One of the supervisors gasped. "Miss Chin, with all due respect, this is highly irregular. He has no qualifications, no experience." "He has integrity," Patricia cut her off. "Which is more than I can say for most of the qualified, experienced staff I've employed." Her gaze swept over them like a scythe. "Any other objections?" Marcus's jaw clenched. "The other staff will talk. There will be rumors. Let them talk." Patricia's hand moved to Dylan's shoulder, a gesture of possession that made his breath catch. "Dylan stays. In this office. Under my direct supervision. Anyone who has a problem with that can submit their resignation." The silence was deafening. "Dylan," Patricia said, not looking away from the fuming staff, "from now on, you work directly for me. You'll handle my schedule, screen my calls, accompany me to meetings, and stay within arm's reach at all times." She finally glanced at him, and something heated flickered in her eyes. "Think you can manage that?" Dylan's mind reeled. Arm's reach. At all times. The implications were staggering, and from the horrified expressions around him, everyone else understood them too. This wasn't just a promotion. This was Patricia Chen claiming him publicly, drawing a line around him that said, "Mine." "Yes," Dylan heard himself say. "I can manage that." "Patricia." Her smile widened, victorious. "Excellent. Marcus, have Dylan's things moved from staff quarters to the executive wing by noon. He'll need to be available for late-night work sessions." "The executive wing?" Marcus looked ready to have a stroke. "But those are rooms reserved for family and essential personnel," Patricia finished. "Dylan is now essential personnel. Are we clear?" She'd backed them into a corner. Fire Dylan, and they'd have to explain why to the woman who held their careers in her hands. Accept him, and they'd have to watch a former cleaner elevated above them. Marcus and the supervisors retreated, their fury barely concealed behind tight-lipped professionalism. The door closed, leaving Dylan alone with Patricia once more. "You just made enemies of everyone who runs this house," Dylan said quietly. "No." Patricia moved closer, her hand still on his shoulder. "I just made it clear that you're under my protection." Anyone who comes for you comes for me. Her fingers squeezed gently. And very few people are stupid enough to do that. Dylan met her eyes, seeing the calculation behind the bold move. She wasn't just protecting him, she was using him. As a test maybe. Or bait. What am I really doing here? He asked. Patricia's expression softened almost imperceptibly. Helping me separate the loyal from the treacherous. And perhaps. She hesitated, vulnerable for just a flash, reminding me what honesty looks like. Her hand fell away and the moment shattered. Now, she said, all business again, let's begin your real education. Because if you're going to survive in my world, Dylan, you're going to need to learn how to fight. And watching her move back to her desk, Dylan realized with crystal clarity that he'd just entered a war zone. With the most dangerous woman in the city as his only ally. God help him. The boardroom meeting had dragged on for 6 brutal hours. Dylan sat in the corner, taking notes on Patricia's tablet as she systematically dismantled the arguments of 3 different department heads who tried to justify their overspending. He'd watched her work with something approaching awe, the way she commanded the room, how her silence could be more devastating than her words. By the time the last executive slunk out, it was past 10 p.m. Patricia collapsed into her chair, the Ice Queen mask finally cracking to reveal exhaustion. She rubbed her temples and Dylan noticed the tension lines etched around her eyes. When did you last eat? He asked before he could stop himself. She looked up, surprised. What? Food. When did you last have actual food? Not coffee. Not those tasteless executive lunches. Patricia blinked. This morning? Maybe yesterday morning. I don't remember. Dylan stood, decision made. Come on. Excuse me? You heard me. Come on. We're leaving. Patricia's eyebrow arched dangerously. I don't recall asking for your opinion on my schedule, Dylan. You're paying me to assist you, right? He held her gaze, refusing to back down. Well, I'm assisting. You can't think clearly when you're running on empty. And you have that merger call with Tokyo at 6 a.m. tomorrow. So unless you want to lose millions because your blood sugar crashed, you're coming with me. For a long moment she just stared at him. Then, impossibly, she laughed. A real laugh that transformed her entire face. Where exactly are you planning to take me at 10 p.m., executive assistant? Somewhere real. 20 minutes later, Patricia Chin, tech mogul worth $3 billion, stood on a street corner in the old district, staring at a food cart with skepticism written across her features. You brought me to street food? Best dumplings in the city, Dylan said, already ordering. Trust me. I haven't eaten street food since. Patricia trailed off. Actually, I'm not sure I ever have. Dylan handed her a paper container of steaming dumplings. Then you've been missing out. They sat on a bench overlooking the river, the city lights reflecting on dark water. Patricia took a cautious bite and her eyes widened. Oh my God. Right? Dylan grinned. Worth the risk of being seen by paparazzi? Absolutely worth it. She took another bite, more enthusiastic this time. How did you find this place? My dad used to bring me here when I was kid. Before. Dylan's voice caught. Before he died. He said the best things in life weren't expensive, they were genuine. Patricia studied him in the dim light, something shifting in her expression. You really believe that? Don't you? I used to. She set down her container, gazed distant. When I was building my first company, living on ramen and ambition. But somewhere along the way I forgot what genuine felt like. Everyone wants something from me now. Investors want returns, employees want raises, rivals want my failure. She turned to him. What do you want, Dylan? Honestly? He met her eyes. Right now? I just want you to finish those dumplings before they get cold. You look like you haven't smiled in months. Patricia's breath caught. That's it? That's all you want? That's all I want right now, Dylan said softly. Tomorrow's problems can wait until tomorrow. She looked at him like he was a puzzle she couldn't solve. This boy from nowhere who'd stumbled into her bathroom and somehow into her carefully guarded world. Who treated her not like a boss or a conquest but like a person who needed to eat dinner. You're dangerous, she whispered. Me? You make me want to be real again. Patricia picked up her dumplings, taking another bite. That's the most dangerous thing anyone's offered me in years. They ate in comfortable silence, the city humming around them. And for the first time in a decade, Patricia Chin felt something she'd thought long dead stirring in her chest. Not control. Not strategy. Just the simple, terrifying warmth of connection. Dylan glanced at her and smiled, unguarded, genuine, and Patricia realized with startling clarity that Marcus's trap had done something far more dangerous than he'd intended. It had given her someone who saw her. Not Patricia Chen, the Ice Queen. Just Patricia. Human. Hungry. Alone. And suddenly she didn't want to be alone anymore. "Dylan?" she said quietly. "Yeah. Thank you. For this." He bumped her shoulder gently. "Anytime, Patricia. Anytime." Above them, stars broke through the city smog, and for one perfect moment, neither of them was invisible anymore. Dylan had spent 3 days preparing for the Zhao Industries presentation. Patricia had given him the assignment as a test: compile the financial projections, organize the pitch deck, ensure every detail was perfect. It was make or break for a partnership worth $200 million. He'd worked 18-hour days, cross-referencing data, triple-checking numbers, learning the intricate dance of corporate finance from scratch. Patricia had stayed late with him each night, her presence both intimidating and oddly comforting as she guided him through the complexities. "You're a natural at this," she'd said last night, reviewing his work. Most MBA graduates couldn't synthesize this information clearly. Now, standing in the executive conference room with 50 investors and board members watching, Dylan felt that confidence shattering. The presentation file wouldn't open. "Technical difficulties," Patricia announced smoothly, her expression betraying nothing. "Dylan, the backup drive?" Dylan's hands trembled as he pulled out the USB drive from his jacket pocket, the one he'd personally loaded that morning, double-checking every file. He plugged it into the system. The screen flashed to life, and Dylan's blood turned to ice. Instead of financial projections, the slides displayed crude modifications. Charts replaced with cartoon graphics, serious data points turned into jokes, Patricia's photo morphed into unflattering memes. The final slide read, "Prepared by Dylan the cleaner, because why hire professionals?" Gasps rippled through the room. Someone snickered. The Zhao Industries representatives exchanged looks of disgust. "What is this?" Mr. Zhao stood, his face thunderous. "Miss Chen, if this is your idea of professionalism—" "There's been tampering," Patricia cut in, her voice diamond hard. But Dylan saw the flicker of doubt in her eyes, the calculation of whether he'd betrayed her. "Tampering?" Julian Blackwood rose from the back row, his smile predatory. He'd attended as an interested investor, but Dylan knew better now. Or perhaps Miss Chen's judgment in personnel needs examination. Promoting a janitor to executive assistant. What did we all expect? Laughter spread like poison. Dylan felt his world collapsing. 3 days of work destroyed. Patricia's reputation damaged. The partnership dying before his eyes. "I swear I didn't," Dylan's voice cracked. "The files were perfect this morning. Someone changed them." "Of course you'd say that," Julian interrupted smoothly. "The question is, Miss Chen, why you trusted someone so obviously unqualified with something so vital." He turned to the board. "Perhaps it's time to question whether personal attachments are clouding our CEO's judgment." The implication hung in the air like smoke. Personal attachments. Dylan saw it on their faces. They thought he'd seduced his way into Patricia's office, that this disaster proved he was just a pretty distraction. Patricia's jaw tightened, and Dylan knew she was calculating odds, measuring damage, deciding whether cutting him loose was the smart play. "Everyone out," she commanded quietly. "Patricia," Mr. Zhao began. "Out. Now." Meeting adjourned. The room emptied slowly, investors whispering, Julian's smug expression burning into Dylan's retinas. When the door finally closed, silence pressed down like a weight. Dylan couldn't meet Patricia's eyes. "I'm sorry. I don't know how." "Show me your process." Her voice was controlled, but he heard the edge beneath. "Everything. How you saved the files, where you stored them, who had access." Dylan walked her through it, his hands shaking as he pulled up file histories, timestamps, security logs. Patricia's fingers flew across her laptop, cross-referencing, digging deeper. "Here," she said finally, her voice sharp with discovery. The files were accessed from a terminal in Executive Suite 3. At 4 a.m. this morning. But that's Julian's temporary office. Patricia's eyes blazed. He had his assistant, Sophie, plant malware on the system 3 days ago during the quarterly review. She pulled up security footage, a woman in a cleaning uniform, moving through the halls in the pre-dawn darkness, stopping at Dylan's desk. Not just any woman. The same woman Dylan had seen whispering with Marcus last week. "They set you up," Patricia said quietly. "Used your background against you. Made it look like the cleaner couldn't handle real work. The partnership is salvageable. I'll call Zhao personally, show him the evidence." Patricia closed her laptop, turning to face Dylan fully. The question is whether you can survive this. Julian won't stop. He'll keep coming after you, using you to get to me. Dylan met her gaze, seeing the offer beneath her words. She was giving him an out. A chance to walk away before the war escalated. I don't quit, he said firmly. Not when I'm right. Not when someone tries to make me invisible again. Something fierce and approving flashed across Patricia's face. Good. Because I'm about to make Julian Blackwood very sorry he underestimated us both. She pulled out her phone, already strategizing. But before she dialed, she placed her hand over Dylan's, brief, warm, deliberate. I never doubted you, she said quietly. Not for a second. And Dylan realized that despite the disaster, despite the humiliation, he'd just won something far more valuable than a presentation. He'd won Patricia Chen's trust. And he'd be damned if he'd let Julian take that away. The emergency board meeting convened at 9 p.m., Patricia's office transformed into a war room. The Zhao Industries deal was hemorrhaging. Mr. Zhao had given them exactly 72 hours to prove the sabotage or the partnership was dead. $200 million and the company's reputation hung in the balance. Dylan sat in his usual corner, invisible again as executives filled the space with their degrees and decades of experience. Patricia stood at the head of the table, her expression carved from granite. Options, she commanded. We could offer additional equity, suggested the CFO. That shows desperation, Patricia countered. Lawsuit against Julian for corporate espionage? The head of legal proposed. Too slow. We need immediate action. Dylan watched them volley ideas back and forth, each one missing the mark. His fingers had been moving unconsciously across his tablet, pulling up files, cross-referencing data he'd absorbed during his 3-day deep dive. Something had been nagging at him since this morning, a pattern he'd noticed in the Zhao Industries reports. What if we're approaching this wrong? The words escaped before he could stop them. The room fell silent. 12 pairs of eyes turned to him with varying degrees of irritation and disbelief. Excuse me? The CFO's tone dripped condescension. Did the assistant have something to contribute? Dylan, Patricia said carefully, and he couldn't read her expression. What are you thinking? He stood, his legs unsteady but his conviction solid. Everyone's focused on the sabotage presentation, on defending our reputation. But we're not asking why Mr. Zhao is really hesitating. Because we wasted his time with a joke presentation, someone muttered. No. Dylan moved to the display screen, pulling up his notes. Look at the Zhao Industries quarterly reports for the past 3 years. They're expanding into Southeast Asian markets, but their supply chain analysis is flawed. They're about to commit to a logistics framework that will cost them 30% more than necessary. He overlaid the data with alternative routing models he'd been playing with during his research. If we pivot our partnership pitch, instead of just offering capital, we offer solutions to their actual problem, we become invaluable, not just investors. The room remained silent, but it was a different quality of silence now. Patricia had moved closer, studying his projections. The Chen Corporation doesn't have supply chain expertise in that region, the CFO objected. No, Dylan agreed. But we have partnerships with 3 companies that do. I cross-referenced our portfolio this morning. If we broker a 3-way deal, Chen Capital, Zhao Industries and Pacific Logistics, everyone wins. Zhao saves money, we expand our influence, and Pacific gets a massive new contract. That's. The head of strategy leaned forward, his skepticism cracking. That's actually brilliant. Why didn't our analysis team catch this? Because they were focused on what we wanted to sell, Dylan said quietly. Not on what Zhao actually needed to buy. Patricia's hand came to rest on the table, her fingers drumming once. Can you have a full proposal ready by morning? It's already 80% complete. I was working on it as a backup plan before. Dylan gestured vaguely at the disaster. Before everything exploded. Show me. Dylan pulled up the full presentation. Clean, professional, addressing every pain point in Zhao's expansion strategy with concrete solutions. He'd worked on it during the late-night hours, a contingency he'd never mentioned because he was just the assistant, and who was he to question the experts? Patricia studied each slide with laser focus. When she looked up, something had shifted in her expression. Pride, maybe, or validation. This is what we're presenting to Zhao tomorrow, she announced to the room. Dylan will deliver it himself. Chaos erupted. Patricia, you can't be serious. He's not qualified. After today's embarrassment. Enough. Patricia's voice cut through the protests like a blade. Dylan saw what a room full of MBAs and executives missed. He created a solution that turns a desperate salvage operation into a strategic victory. She turned to face her board directly. And if any of you can't handle the fact that Insight doesn't require a corner office, there's the door. No one moved. Dylan, Patricia continued, will present tomorrow at 9 a.m. I'll be there to support him, but this is his strategy, his vision. Anyone who wants to question my judgment is welcome to compete with his results. She smiled then, that dangerous smile that meant someone was about to learn a very expensive lesson. Dismissed. Except you, Dylan. We have work to do. The executives filed out, their expressions ranging from grudging respect to barely concealed fury. Dylan caught snippets of whispered conversations, but he didn't care. Patricia believed in him, trusted him, was giving him the platform to prove himself. When the door closed, she turned to him and her professional mask slipped just slightly. You saved us, she said quietly. You saved me. I just saw a pattern. You saw what I pay people 6 figures to see and they missed it. She moved closer and Dylan's breath caught. Do you understand what you just did? You didn't just solve a business problem. You proved that I wasn't crazy for believing in you. I won't let you down tomorrow. I know you won't. Patricia's hand found his, her touch electric. Because you're not doing this for pride or promotion. You're doing it because it's right. Because it helps people. Her thumb traced his knuckles, and the gesture felt more intimate than any embrace. Show them tomorrow, Dylan, she whispered. Show them all what real talent looks like. And standing in her office with the city lights blazing behind them, Dylan made a silent promise. He would. The presentation to Zhao Industries was a triumph. Dylan had stood before the conference room with Patricia at his side, delivering his strategy with a confidence that surprised even himself. Mr. Zhao's initial skepticism had melted into genuine interest, then enthusiasm. By the time Dylan finished, the deal wasn't just salvaged, it was expanded to $300 million. Exceptional work, Miss Chin, Mr. Zhao had said, shaking Patricia's hand. Then turning to Dylan with newfound respect. And you, young man, have a remarkable future ahead of you. The victory celebration should have been sweet. Instead, Dylan found himself in Patricia's private library that evening, watching her pore over documents with an intensity that bordered on obsession. Patricia, what's wrong? We won. The board is backing down. Julian's scheme failed. It's not enough. She looked up and he saw something dangerous in her eyes. Julian will come at you again. Harder. He'll dig into your past, use your family situation as ammunition, paint you as a gold digger who seduced his way into my confidence. Let him. I know the truth. The truth doesn't matter in my world. Perception does. Patricia slid a file folder across the desk. Which is why I had my investigator look deeper into your background. Dylan's stomach dropped. What did you find? Your father, Michael Carter. He didn't just die in a construction accident, did he? The name hit Dylan like a physical blow. Carter. His father's real name, before financial ruin forced him to take his wife's maiden name, Reynolds, to escape the creditors. How did you? Michael Carter was the founder of Apex Engineering Solutions, Patricia continued, her voice gentle despite the bombshell. A mid-sized firm that specialized in sustainable infrastructure. 15 years ago, he secured patents for revolutionary green building techniques that are now industry standard. Dylan's hands clenched. I know the story. His business partner stole everything. The patents, the company, the contracts. Dad spent 3 years fighting legal battles he couldn't afford to win. The stress, the shame, it killed him as surely as that construction beam. The business partner's name was Richard Blackwood. Time stopped. Julian's father, Dylan whispered. Patricia nodded grimly. Apex Engineering was absorbed into Blackwood Industries 12 years ago. Last month, Julian sold it to a shell corporation for twice its value. A shell corporation I've now traced back to Marcus, who's been serving as Julian's inside man for months. They've been planning this, Dylan said slowly, pieces falling into place. Julian knew who I was the moment I entered your office. Not just knew. Orchestrated. Patricia pulled up more documents. Marcus wasn't randomly assigned to the Chin estate. Julian placed him here 3 years ago. When you applied for the cleaning position, Marcus flagged your application specifically. Dylan Reynolds, son of Michael Carter, desperate for money and unaware of his connection to the Blackwood family. The bathroom trap wasn't meant to humiliate us, Dylan realized, ice flooding his veins. It was meant to create a scandal that would force you to fire me quickly, before you could discover who I really was. But I didn't fire you. I promoted you. Patricia's smile was sharp. And now Julian is panicking because Dylan Reynolds the cleaner is one thing. Dylan Carter, rightful heir to Apex Engineering's patents and intellectual property, is quite another. Dylan stared at her. Heir? The company was bankrupt when Dad died. The company was. The patents weren't. Patricia slid forward a legal document. Your father never signed them over. Richard forged the transfer documents. It's taken my legal team weeks to uncover the fraud, but the evidence is irrefutable. Those patents are worth approximately $80 million in licensing fees alone. The number was incomprehensible. 80 million. His mother's care. Emma's education. Every debt that had crushed their family, erased in an instant. Why are you giving me this? Dylan asked hoarsely. You could have kept it quiet, used it as leverage. Because you deserve to know who you are. Patricia stood, moving around the desk. You're not some charity case I rescued. You're Michael Carter's son. You have every right to walk in my world, not as my assistant, but as my equal. I'm not your equal. Tomorrow morning, the Zhao Partnership Agreement will list you as co-director of the project. Your name. Your title. Your authority. Her hand cupped his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. Julian Blackwood destroyed your father and tried to destroy you. But he made one critical mistake. What's that? Patricia's smile turned predatory. He gave me a reason to care about someone. And I protect what's mine. The word hung between them, mine, carrying implications that went far beyond business partnerships. Patricia, Dylan breathed, I don't want your charity. It's not charity. It's justice. She pulled him closer and her voice dropped to something raw, vulnerable. And maybe it's selfish, but I need you to be strong enough to stand beside me. Not behind me. Not beneath me. Beside me. Dylan's world had been rewritten in the span of an hour. He wasn't invisible. He wasn't worthless. He was Michael Carter's son, with a legacy stolen and a future suddenly blazing with possibility. Julian's going to come for us both now, he said quietly. Let him. Patricia's forehead pressed against his. We'll be ready. And in that moment, Dylan understood what she'd really given him. Not just money or status or revenge. She'd given him back his name. His power. Himself. Tomorrow the war would begin in earnest. But tonight he was no longer the invisible servant. He was Dylan Carter. And he was done hiding. The Chin Corporation Annual Gala was the social event of the season. A glittering display of wealth and power where deals worth billions were brokered over champagne and strategic smiles. Dylan had never imagined attending such an event, much less walking through the grand ballroom doors as Patricia Chen's official partner and co-director. The custom tuxedo Patricia had insisted on purchasing fit him perfectly, but he still felt like an imposter among the designer gowns and inherited jewels. Patricia, radiant in midnight blue silk, kept her hand on his arm, a statement of ownership that made photographers' cameras flash like lightning. Breathe, she murmured as they descended the marble staircase. You belong here. Do I? Dylan watched the crowd part around them, conversations dying mid-sentence as people recognized the former cleaning staff now elevated to Patricia's inner circle. More than most of them. Her grip tightened. Remember, you're not here to apologize for existing. You're here to remind them that merit matters more than pedigree. Julian Blackwood waited at the bottom of the stairs, immaculate in white dinner jacket, his smile poisonous. Beside him stood Sophie, Marcus's accomplice, now dressed as a guest rather than staff. Patricia, darling, Julian drawled, though his eyes were fixed on Dylan with barely concealed hatred. What a progressive choice of escort. Though I must say the help cleaning up rather nicely these days. Julian. Patricia's voice could have frozen vodka. Still compensating for inadequacy with expensive tailoring, I see. Laughter rippled through nearby guests. Julian's jaw tightened. Enjoy your evening, he said with false pleasantness. I'm sure it will be memorable. They moved into the crowd, Patricia working the room with practiced ease while Dylan shadowed her, learning the intricate dance of corporate politics. He was introduced to CEOs, politicians, old money families who looked at him with curiosity ranging from genuine interest to thinly veiled contempt. 2 hours in, Dylan excused himself to the restroom. The executive lounge was mercifully empty, allowing him a moment to breathe away from the scrutiny. He splashed water on his face, staring at his reflection. Dylan Carter, co-director, wearing a $5,000 tuxedo, dating a billionaire. The world had gone insane. He returned to find security guards surrounding Patricia in the hallway, their faces grim. His heart lurched. What's happening? Patricia's expression was carefully neutral, but he saw the fury beneath. Someone reported a theft. The Whitmore diamond, a necklace worth $2 million, has gone missing from the display vault. I don't understand what that has to do with. They're saying it was found in your locker. Julian appeared from the crowd, his voice carrying to the assembled guests. In the executive staff quarters. Strange place for a $2 million necklace to end up, wouldn't you say? The crowd pressed closer, phones already recording. Dylan felt the trap closing like jaws. That's impossible, he said firmly. I haven't been near the staff quarters in weeks. Haven't you? Sophie stepped forward, holding up her phone. Security footage shows you entering the staff wing at 4 p.m. today. 30 minutes before the necklace was reported missing. Dylan's mind raced. He had gone to the staff quarters, to collect his old work clothes for dry cleaning, a sentimental gesture Patricia had smiled at. But he'd been nowhere near the lockers. Check the footage, Patricia commanded the head of security. All of it. We did, Miss Chin, the security chief said uncomfortably. The cameras in the locker room itself were malfunctioning during that time window. How convenient, Julian smiled. Almost as if someone with technical expertise disabled them. Someone who might have learned such skills while accessing your systems as your personal assistant. The implication was clear. Dylan had the access, the opportunity, and now the evidence. This is a setup, Dylan said, his voice steady despite the panic clawing at his chest. Someone planted that necklace. Of course you'd say that, Sophie interjected. Just like you claimed the sabotage presentation wasn't your fault. How many convenient excuses can one person have? Patricia stepped between Dylan and the crowd, her presence like a shield. If you're accusing my co-director of theft, you'll need more than circumstantial evidence and convenient camera malfunctions. We have the necklace in his locker, Julian countered. With his fingerprints on the case. I've never even seen that necklace. Your locker code was used, the security chief confirmed reluctantly. And the biometric scan matches your profile. Dylan felt the ground crumbling beneath him. They'd thought of everything. His code, his fingerprints, his presence in the building. A perfect frame that would destroy not just his reputation but Patricia's for standing by him. Arrest him, someone in the crowd called. He's a thief. I knew he didn't belong here. Enough. Patricia's voice cracked like a whip. No one is being arrested. Not until I've conducted my own investigation. Patricia, Julian said softly, dangerously, are you really willing to stake your company's reputation on defending a man caught red-handed? The board is watching. Your investors are watching. He gestured to the assembled crowd. Everyone is watching you protect a common criminal. The choice was explicit. Stand by Dylan and risk everything or cut him loose to save herself. Dylan met her eyes, seeing the calculation there, the impossible decision. Patricia, it's okay. Let them search my things. Let them investigate. I have nothing to hide. No. Her hand found his, fingers intertwining in front of hundreds of witnesses. You don't prove innocence by submitting to a rigged game. She turned to address the crowd, and Dylan saw the warrior queen emerge, the woman who'd built an empire through sheer force of will. This gala is over. Security will seal the building. No one leaves until we review every second of footage, every entry log, every possible angle. Her gaze swept over Julian and Sophie like a scythe. And when we find who actually planted that necklace, I promise you, the consequences will be biblical. Julian's smile never wavered, but Dylan saw the flash of uncertainty in his eyes. The game had just escalated beyond his control. And Patricia Chin never played games she couldn't win. The ballroom had transformed from a celebration into a courthouse, hundreds of guests forced to remain as Patricia's security team worked with methodical precision. Dylan sat beside Patricia at the head table, acutely aware of every whispered conversation, every contemptuous glance. Julian held court across the room, his confidence unshaken. This is a circus, Patricia. You're humiliating yourself and your company over a thief who saved this company $200 million 3 days ago, Patricia cut him off coldly. While you were busy sabotaging presentations and bribing my staff. Careful with accusations you can't prove. Oh, I can prove quite a lot. Patricia stood, tablet in hand. Starting with the fact that Sophie Chin, your supposed date, tonight, is actually Sophie Blackwood, your cousin, who you installed in my household staff 18 months ago. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Sophie's face was drained of color. Family connections aren't crimes, Julian said smoothly, but Dylan heard the first crack in his composure. Corporate espionage is. Patricia connected her tablet to the main display screen. Dylan, if you would. Dylan stood, his hands steadier than he expected. They'd spent the past hour in Patricia's private office, piecing together the puzzle while security reviewed footage. What they'd found was damning. At 3:47 p.m. today, Dylan began pulling up timestamped footage. Sophie accessed the vault using credentials stolen from the head of security. Here she is removing the Whitmore diamond. The screen showed Sophie, dressed in a staff uniform, carefully extracting the necklace from its case. At 4:02 p.m., I entered the staff quarters to collect personal items. You can see me on this camera going to my old room, not the locker area. New footage showed Dylan walking past the lockers without stopping. At 4:08 p.m., Sophie planted the necklace in my locker using a cloned access code. But she made one critical error. Dylan zoomed in on Sophie's hand as she placed the necklace. On her wrist was a distinctive bracelet, the same one she was wearing tonight. That proves nothing, Julian interjected. She could have been moving it for safekeeping. While wearing gloves to avoid fingerprints? Patricia's smile was razor-sharp. And then deliberately triggering the alarm system from an external device. Here at 4:15 p.m., to ensure maximum chaos? The footage showed Sophie's other hand holding a phone, her thumb pressing the screen. Seconds later, alarm klaxons blared in the recording. She staged the entire theft, Dylan continued, counting on the cameras being malfunctioning in the locker room. Except they weren't actually broken. They were remotely disabled using code that traces back to Blackwood Industries' proprietary security software. Patricia pulled up network logs, highlighting the digital fingerprints that led directly to Julian's company servers. The ballroom erupted. Julian's composure finally shattered. This is fabricated. You've doctored these files. With timestamps verified by 3 independent cybersecurity firms? Patricia held up documentation. And corroborated by Sophie's own phone records, which show her receiving 17 calls from your personal number in the hour before the theft? Sophie bolted for the exit. Security blocked her path. Sophie, don't, Julian commanded, but desperation had replaced his earlier confidence. I'm not going to prison for you. Sophie's voice cracked. You promised this would work. You said she'd never figure it out, that she was too distracted by her pet project to see. Shut up. Julian lunged toward her, but security intervened. Sophie turned to the crowd, tears streaming. He planned everything. The sabotage presentation, the theft, all of it. He's obsessed with destroying her because she rejected his merger proposal 5 years ago, rejected him. The revelation hung in the air like poison gas. Julian Blackwood, powerful CEO, reduced to a vindictive ex-suitor weaponizing corporate warfare for personal revenge. He said Dylan was the weakness, Sophie continued, words tumbling out. That Patricia Chin was untouchable until she cared about someone. That's why he targeted you, not for who you were but for what you represented. Proof that the Ice Queen had a heart. Dylan felt Patricia's hand find his beneath the table, her fingers trembling slightly. She'd been right. Julian hadn't just wanted to destroy Dylan. He'd wanted to destroy Patricia's capacity for trust, for connection, for anything human. Officers are on their way, Patricia announced, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what had just unfolded. Julian Blackwood, Sophie Blackwood, and Marcus Reynolds. Yes, I found him hiding in the kitchen. Will be charged with conspiracy, corporate espionage, theft, and fraud. She turned to address the assembled crowd directly, and Dylan saw the transformation, from vulnerable woman to unstoppable force. To everyone who doubted Dylan Carter tonight, who assumed his guilt based on his background rather than evidence, I want you to remember this moment. Remember that pedigree means nothing without character. That titles mean nothing without integrity. Her hand squeezed Dylan's, pulling him to standing beside her. Dylan saved my company. Saved me. And proved that the most valuable asset in any organization isn't money or connections. It's honesty. It's courage. It's refusing to be invisible when the world wants to erase you. She turned to him, and in her eyes he saw everything she couldn't say in front of hundreds of witnesses. Gratitude. Respect. Something deeper that made his breath catch. Thank you, she said simply. For being real. The ballroom exploded in applause. Some genuine, some obligatory, but all acknowledging the seismic shift in power that had just occurred. Julian was led away in handcuffs, his empire crumbling in real time as investors pulled out via urgent phone calls. And Dylan Carter, who'd started the evening as a former cleaner playing dress-up, ended it as the man who'd defeated one of the city's most powerful families. Not through money or status. Through truth. The weapon Patricia had been searching for all along. 3 months after the gala, Dylan stood by the river where Patricia had first tasted street food dumplings and remembered what it felt like to be human. The city lights reflected on dark water, and autumn wind carried the scent of rain and possibility. His phone buzzed with the day's headlines. Carter reclaims father's legacy, Apex Engineering patents restored. Below it, Blackwood Industries files for bankruptcy protection. And finally, Chin Corporation posts record profits under new co-director Dylan Carter. The world had shifted on its axis. His mother was in a premier care facility, her treatments cutting-edge and hopeful. Emma had a full scholarship plus living expenses, her future secured. The debts that had defined his entire life were erased like they'd never existed. But none of it mattered compared to the sound of footsteps approaching behind him. "You're brooding again," Patricia said, joining him at the railing. She wore jeans and a simple cashmere sweater. No armor, no masks, just Patricia. "That's my thing. You're supposed to be the optimistic one." "I'm not brooding. I'm thinking. Dangerous." She bumped his shoulder gently, the gesture so familiar now it made his heart ache. "What about?" Dylan turned to face her fully, taking in the woman who'd seen him when he was invisible, who'd trusted him when logic said she shouldn't, who'd stood beside him when it would have been easier to walk away. "About how 3 months ago I stumbled into a bathroom and caught a falling queen," he said quietly. "And how that moment changed everything." Patricia's expression softened. It wasn't just that moment. It was every moment after. Every late night working together. Every battle we fought. Every time you reminded me that power without humanity is just tyranny in expensive suits. You taught me I wasn't worthless. You taught me I wasn't alone. Her hand found his, fingers interlacing like they belonged there. "Do you know what Julian's biggest mistake was? You thought making me care about you would make me weak. But you made me stronger. Made me remember why I built this empire in the first place. Not to isolate myself at the top, but to create something meaningful." Dylan reached into his pocket, his heart hammering. The ring had cost him 3 months' salary, not because it needed to be expensive, but because he'd wanted it to be worthy of her. A simple platinum band with a single diamond, elegant and understated. "Perfect." "Patricia Chin," he said, and his voice only shook slightly, "I have nothing to offer you that you don't already have. No fortune, no legacy, no ancient bloodline. Just me. Just this." He opened the box and the diamond caught the city lights. "Just a promise that I'll always see you, not the ice queen, not the billionaire, not the untouchable CEO. Just Patricia. The woman who eats dumplings by the river and laughs at terrible jokes and falls asleep during board meetings when she thinks no one's watching." Patricia's breath caught, tears gathering in eyes that had remained dry through corporate battles and public humiliation. "I'm proposing," Dylan continued, dropping to one knee on the river walk where they'd first connected as humans rather than boss and employee. "Not because I need your money or your status, but because I need you. Because you're the only person who makes me feel like Dylan Carter. Not the invisible servant, not Michael Carter's son, not the charity project. Just me. Dylan. I know I'm not what anyone expected for you. I know there are 100 men with better pedigrees, better connections, better everything. But none of them will love you the way I do. None of them will fight for you the way I do. None of them will see you the way I do." He held the ring up and his hand was steady now, certain. "Marry me, Patricia. Not because it makes sense. Not because it's strategic. But because somewhere between that bathroom and this river, I fell completely, impossibly in love with you." Silence stretched between them, and for one terrible moment Dylan thought he'd miscalculated, presumed too much, wanted something he had no right to want. Then Patricia was pulling him up, her hands cupping his face, tears finally spilling over. "You absolute fool," she whispered. "Do you really think I haven't been waiting for this? Do you think I promote random cleaners to co-director positions? Do you think I destroy enemies and rebuild legacies for just anyone? Is that a yes? That's a you should have asked months ago, you beautiful idiot." She kissed him then, deep and desperate and real, pouring 3 months of restrained feelings into the connection. When she pulled back, she was smiling, that genuine smile he'd first glimpsed over dumplings. "Yes. 1,000 times yes." Dylan slid the ring onto her finger with shaking hands, and it fit perfectly, like it had been waiting for this moment all along. "I love you," he said simply. "Not Patricia Chin the mogul. Not the ice queen. Just you." "I love you too," she whispered against his lips. "My impossible, infuriating, perfect Dylan." They stood by the river as the city moved around them, two people who'd found each other across an impossible divide. The former servant and the untouchable queen. The invisible boy and the woman who'd taught him to be seen. Around them the world would talk. The media would speculate. Rivals would scheme. But none of it mattered anymore. Because Patricia Chin had chosen love over logic. And Dylan Carter had chosen the woman over the empire. And standing there with his arms around her, the ring catching the light on her finger, Dylan finally understood what his father had tried to teach him all those years ago. The best things in life weren't expensive. They were genuine. They were earned through honesty and courage and refusing to be invisible. They were real. And Patricia Chin, brilliant, fierce, impossibly real Patricia, was his. Forever. Thank you for watching and listening to this story. Hit the subscribe button as I will be bringing more interesting stories. Turn on your notification because you would not want to miss my story for anything.